Hey, this is Malika of Evanston Live TV, and I have with me today Eduardo Gomez. He's Deputy City Clerk here in Evanston, and this is your first time running.
Yeah, it's I'm a first time candidate, first time running a campaign. It's exciting. It's a good experience and I love it.
You love it. Isn't it stressful? It's like, ugh.
Yeah, it's a full-time job on top of the one I already have, but somehow I manage.
Mm. So what are you enjoying about this experience with the campaign? Because I can't, I know you all, it's so many candidates right now and forums and individual interviews and back to back, back to back, back to back. Like, how are you handling all of that?
Well, the thing I enjoy is being able to talk with folks, via Zoom, over the phone. It's good to have that engagement with the public again. That's something that I've missed for a long time. And getting back into that sort of rhythm, it's refreshing to me.
Mhm.
And so on top of that, I also, try to, because I'm the deputy clerk during the day, at night it's when I'm doing most of my canvassing and most of my campaign work. So it's a lot of work, but in my opinion, it's worth it to get, the right information out to the public. So that way, they know about the elections
Mhm.
and, hopefully that encourages them to participate in this upcoming primary.
Mhm. I know the city clerk's office, that office is really about the people. So we're used to, well, at least when I would go into the city clerk's office, people were coming in and out. I mean, you all are really interacting with the people of Evanston. So what's it been like with COVID? I mean, you got to be lonely sitting up in that office. You don't have anybody, no people to talk to.
No, I mean, and since the beginning, because that office is just a one person staff department. I'm used to just being in the office on my own.
Mhm.
But the public, I do miss that interaction coming in and out. So it's nothing new to me, but I'm always there in the office in case someone has a question, especially because the civic center is closed. I want to make sure that I'm there to answer any questions, and I also try to do my best to set appointments with the public in case they want to come in person and seek some of the services that we continue to offer during this pandemic.
Mhm. Right. So the Civic Center is closed, but the city clerk's office is open.
Well, the building, like most departments, they're still functioning, but they're functioning remotely. But because we are such an integral part of the services here, I want to make sure that we're accessible to the residents. And so even though we might be the building closed to the public, I do my best to set appointments so that way they can come in and meet with us. Or
Mhm.
sometimes I take that extra step and go to their homes if they're unable to come to the office for whatever reason.
Oh my gosh. Are you layering up on the masks?
Yep, I make sure that I'm covered up, 6 feet apart. But it's mostly just to deliver things such as applications for mail-in ballots or to deliver their handicap placards. I do my best to not engage with the resident one-on-one. I just drop off the information in their mailboxes.
Okay. Oh, that's woo. Okay. Okay, Eduardo. All right. So the city clerk's office, it's heating up right now. Well, it has
Yeah, a lot of
been.
candidates.
Yeah, a lot of candidates, but the office itself. I mean, I just read in the patch today that the city is being sued by Claire Kelly. She's running for first ward alderman, and Mary Rosinski. She's running for seventh ward, and they're suing over FOIA. So
Yes, I did read about that.
what the heck is happening?
Well, in my capacity, I'm able, if I'm not mistaken, it was some documents that were not properly redacted, and they said that they withheld information, from my understanding. And so I think that I'm not involved in that process, so I can't really comment on what the the mindset was behind the way they chose to disclose the information.
Mhm.
But, I do applaud them for being persistent and continuing to fight for their access to information. I think it shows that, our residents are very involved in the activities of the city, and that's a good step towards creating more transparency. So that way people can see what's happening in their community.
Mhm. Now, when Devon took that office as city clerk, I can tell you a lot of people didn't even know what FOIA was until he came on the scene. And then when he educated the public about FOIA, I mean, the FOIA requests just started flooding in because the public, they came to understand like, oh, I can get this information. I can get access. I have the right to have this information about what's going on at the city. People just didn't know.
Yeah.
And it just seems like the city clerk's office has changed so much. Now, I remember when Rodney Green was the city clerk, and I would come up there once in a blue moon, and his office was staffed. I mean, it was busy in there all the time, busy with staff running around, people coming in and out. And then when Devon took office, it started out with a few of you all in that office. Um, and then one day I walked in and he was just in there by himself. I mean, you could hear a pin drop. He was just sitting there by himself. And I was like, okay, what's going on? But he was still getting the FOIAs out, the FOIA requests out. And and then and then he was stripped of FOIA for the most part. Other FOIA officers were added. So this is like the conversation going around town. People are trying to get understanding, especially during the election, what's actually happening with the city clerk's office. So then that was pretty much taken away from him, and now the city's getting sued over FOIA requests.
Yeah, so it's been, I've been there for almost the entire 4 years, so I saw how everything transpired, and I do know that the city added more FOIA officers and they said to help with the production of records, of public records with the FOIA requests, because we received several FOIA requests on a daily basis. And so I did see that there was some contention there between the city and the clerk. And I do admire him for his tenacity to be persistent and making sure that we're being compliant with transparency. And even myself, before I even joined the office, I didn't know what FOIA was. And so it was an educating process for me. So I appreciate that. And because of that, I know more about how it works and the benefits that it holds to our community. And that's something that I want to continue. And that's something that I'm grateful for in this capacity, that the clerk was able to educate me on that matter. And I want to continue that education that he did and bring it to a broader audience in our community, because I think it's important. I think more people need to be involved in the and aware of what's happening in their communities.
Yes, yes. He ran on transparency. That was his campaign when he ran for city clerk, was transparency. So is that your platform that you're running on?
That is part of my platform. I want to, see how I can better that process. I know, for example, folks are very concerned when it comes to FOIAs related to the police department. They
Mm-hmm.
want to make sure that those records are in the possession of an independent office who's able to make determinations that are in the best interest of the public. And I think that in order for the city to recuperate some of that trust that's been lost, it's worth exploring, and it's worth bringing back those records into the custody of the city clerk's office. So that way, people can see that there's steps being taken in order to ensure that public trust is being gained. And in regards to my platform, I want to continue that service that the clerk has done for their community because I think it's very important. But I also want to make sure that our services are accessible to everyone, and I do it in an efficient and inclusive way. And I also want to make sure that I am increasing civic participation in our community. And that means going out doing more voter registration drive, doing civic engagement events, and doing this in partnership with many of our organizations here, such as the ETHS High School and the League of Women Voters, the Evanston Public Library. I think that's also very important, especially given when it comes to elections, we don't have a very high turnout. I want to increase that, year after year.
Hmm. So I'm going back to uh, when you had just come aboard the city clerk's team. Like you didn't even know what FOIA was. So what drew you to that position, to that office?
Yeah, so I was born here in Evanston to immigrant parents, and growing up, I saw the struggles that my mother had in accessing resources and services because there was a language barrier between her and being able to communicate to the person across the table. And so seeing that really made an impact on me as a little kid. And so growing up, I wanted to make sure that I worked in a setting that allowed me the ability to serve the public. So that way, no one would have to ever face that sort of stress that my mother went through. And so when I returned back to Evanston about, I think it's been 10 years, I felt that the best way to make that sort of impact was working within the organization that had the ability to make those meaningful changes. And so I began by working at the Evanston Public Library, where I created a bilingual computer course program. And I took that to many different areas in the community. And I partnered with people such as the Family Focus Center, the Veterans Center. I also went to some senior homes. And because of that, I was able to give our seniors, our veterans, our Spanish speaking residents the ability to get a better understanding of how technology worked. And so I wasn't satisfied there. I felt like I could do more. I felt like there was more I could do for my community. And so right around that time when the clerk was running, it's when his name began popping up because of the circumstances that led to his campaign, when he was
Wrongfully
wrongfully
arrested.
arrested.
Hmm.
And so I said, this is a man that's trying to do better change for the community. And I kept up with this campaign. And after I saw that he won, I saw there was an opening for a deputy city clerk. So I said, this is my opportunity to work for an independent office that serves the public and give me the ability to make some recommendations for better change to services and resources for our community. Um, Even at the library, I always advocated for a language access policy. And I think now in this role that I'm in, I have the ability to do that.
You said you moved back here 10 years ago. I think public record. Eddie, are you still with
Oh,
us?
I think
Okay, there you go. Um, public record indicated that you have a home outside of Evanston.
that was years. I think you're talking down south by Oak Lawn, correct? That home?
I don't know the
Yeah.
exact address.
That I was I was a homeowner. I bought a home several years ago, but that was for investment purposes, and I sold it for a profit. But I continue to live here in the city.
Yeah, Evanston is beautiful. Why would you live anywhere else but Evanston, right?
it was an opportunity to partner up with family to, earn some extra income. So I felt why not take that entrepreneurship, opportunity.
Yes, yes. So, it's so much controversy with the city clerk's office. I'm like trying to keep up with everything. So, um, yeah, it's a lot going on in your office, man. For the past 4 years, I
Yeah,
would
well,
say.
you don't have to tell me. I've been in that office.
Okay, so you have the lawsuit going on, which I mean, eventually, will you be called in to that lawsuit to speak, to be deposed, or however that works?
The one currently that was
How
just
many are there?
mentioned.
How many
Are
are
you
there?
referring to the one? Well, I need to know which one in particular because not I've never been asked to speak in
Okay,
any sort of a lawsuit. So I don't believe that will ever happen. But if I
okay,
am called, it's my duty to be there. But it's unlikely.
okay, okay. So Alderman Ann Rainey, she's always in
Hmm.
the news. Always, always. Always something she has said, and then it blows over, and it just got to the point where everyone's like, "Oh, that's just Ann Rainey." But people are hurt by some of the things that she actually says, you know? So as of recent, she said City Clerk Devon Reed, her opponent now running for 8th Ward Alderman, she referred to him as a very scary person. And I mean, you've worked with the clerk. So we got a question coming in here. Actually, I'm trying to reword it. I'm going to read it exactly the way it is. Alderman Rainey has recently received a lot of criticism for calling Clerk Reed a quote unquote very scary person. And you've worked with the clerk for the last 4 years. Do you think he's scary?
Do I think he's scary?
Uh-huh.
Is that the question? Um, well, I would say in my experience, I was part of a incident involving the clerk, and and so the findings that were discovered were true. In my experience, I think that it's. I don't want to think people to think I'm biased, but I've had a different experience working with the clerk. But I think those comments that were made, I understand where they're coming from, why the public's upset, and they don't have a place in our community. And so I think this sort of these comments, we have to do our best to continue to call out any sort of racism and hold ourselves accountable to a higher standard, especially if we're public officials or folks that are running for office.
Hmm. Um, Wait, did you answer my question? Do you think he's scary?
Well, I don't believe he's scary. I mean, I don't not in my opinion, no. And it
Mm,
depends on what context you're defining scary. And if it's in the context of those remarks, I don't believe so.
okay. Well, when you refer to a black person as scary or angry, it's a racist comment. Very, very racist. We take offense to that.
Yeah,
Very much.
absolutely. And I, like I said, those sort of hurtful comments uh, don't have a place in a progressive city such as Evanston. And we have to make sure that we continue to call out any systemic racism we see, we hear, we read, and hold ourselves and anyone else to a higher standard, especially when you're a public servant. You're looked at as a role model, and we have to make sure we display the right attributes to those that are watching us, especially our youth.
Mhm. The systemic racism, because the city clerk's office is about the people. And Devon taught us that it's about transparency. So if information is being redacted and not being sent out as requested, um, I mean, I don't ever recall Rodney Green having those issues. He seemed much more agreeable, maybe. And Devon is very much about transparency and the people and doing the job. He almost knows the job of the alderman better than the alderman up there. Um, I mean, he was remarkable. I just don't remember Rodney Green calling the alderman out or the mayor out on certain things that weren't being done correctly or properly. But Devon was always on top of it, and he just got so much pushback. So a lot of people saw that as systemic racism because he's this strong young black man who's very knowledgeable of his job, his position, and truly about the people. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Clerk Reed, has always advocated for transparency,
Mhm.
and I do watch city council meetings, and I've seen those instances where things have gotten a bit heated in the moment, and so he's always said that he does things for in part because of the community. He cares so much about community. He wants to make sure that the city is being compliant, transparent, and so that's a good thing, you know.
Mm.
And I think there are times where it's about having a dialogue, a discussion, to avoid these sort of confrontations, especially playing out in such a public setting. I think if there are collaborations and strong relationships with those that work within the city, I think a lot of this could have been avoided. And I think that I want to continue to do the things that he did, which is making sure that the city is doing the right thing. And I think one of the things I have and bring to the table is that I have great working relationships with everyone, from members of the city council to internal staff. So I think I'll be able to bring people to the table and have that discussion and make them work in collaboration with me to make sure that we're being more transparent than we already are.
Have you ever had to correct or call any of them out on anything? Because that seems to be an issue. So, do they see you as a person who's just going to be agreeable and, oh, Eduardo, he's good. He's going to follow the system and he's he's not going to give us
I know,
trouble.
yes,
You know what I'm
yes.
saying?
Well, in my capacity, as the deputy city clerk, I am still a city staff member.
Mhm.
So in my capacity, I don't have that ability to be as direct as the clerk is. And so because I'm a city staff member, I still can be reprimanded just like anybody else. If someone were to arrive late to work or have an altercation with their, you know, department head, they can be reprimanded or terminated. So I still, in my current capacity, you know, am I still respond to the city, but you know, the aldermen and staff, they respect me because over the years I've shown that I'm able to do the work of the office. I I want to make sure that city council meetings are done accordingly to the rules. So I think having a 101 course on the ways to properly conduct a city council meeting is needed as a refresher, because we may be having a new council, you know, in a few months. So I think giving a refresher to making sure that we're complying with city council rules and procedures. I want to make sure that we do some sort of training as a refresher to those that could still be on there, and to those newcomers. but I'm not a yes man. I don't want people to believe that, I am just going to sit back and be quiet. I'm someone that believes in truth and transparency and doing the right thing. And so I would take a more diplomatic approach in resolving these matters. So that way, we avoid these sort of public confrontations. I think there's other means to resolving issues that rather than a shouting match. I think that can be avoided.
Mm, mm. Well, I was present for a lot of those city council meetings, and I mean, Devon never raised his voice. He never raised his voice. I mean, just people watching, witnessing, he never raised his voice. He just stated a fact and he got pushback. So that's why I'm just wondering, I'm questioning all the candidates running for city clerk, because clearly if you don't play by the system, then you're a problem.
Yeah, and in that capacity, I don't respond
Mm,
to the alderman. I don't respond to the city staff. I respond to the public. So
mm,
I want them to be my critics. And if they believe that I'm not doing things properly, then I need them to tell me that. I need them to say, hey, we need you to be more vocal. We need you to be to put up a bigger fight. You know, the clerk has his way of doing things, and I'll have my way of doing things. We're not the same person. And
mm,
so that doesn't mean we can't achieve the same goal. It just means we use different methods to achieve the same results. So, I want that to be clear that, you know, I don't want people to. I'm a different person than the clerk, and I'll be able to do the things that he's done, but in a different manner because I'm a different person.
mm. Okay. Now, with FOIA pretty much being taken out of that office, what is your vision, your plan for getting it back into the city clerk's office? I mean, do you plan to uh, get rid of all the extra FOIA officers and bring it all back to one central place? Because it seemed like it ran smoother when it was in the city clerk's office with City Clerk Reed, and then when it started going out, FOIA requests started coming in later. Well, they're saying it's because of the volume, but it seemed like when you and Devon were in the city clerk's office, you guys handled the volume pretty well between the two of you. And then
So I
so
think
with all these other officers, now it's the requests are coming in later, and now you all got a lawsuit. Information's being with allegedly being withheld. Well, how are you going to fix that and bring it back? Or do you want it to all come back? Or do you want to keep it the way that the council decided it should be?
Well, again, because right now our community is very vocal about wanting more transparency and more
Mhm,
accountability, I
mhm,
think that we need to again, like I mentioned a while ago, the records relating to the police department. I think it's a good idea if those records are stored in the city clerk's office, an independent office that is not accountable to the city council, that's not accountable to the city manager or the staff. I think that's the first step in making sure that we gain that trust. I do would like to uh, have more a bigger role in the redaction process because I want to make sure that the person in that capacity as city clerk, for example, myself, I want to make sure that I'm able to review those documents and make that determination and say, okay, you know, maybe these redactions are applicable, or hold on, why are we redacting this? I think we need to have a further discussion and see if this is actually something that we need to redact, because I don't think that privilege is being given to us to review those documents beforehand. And I think that's something that I want to be, as an independent officer, as a FOIA officer of the city, mind you, I think that's my right to be able to review those documents before they are even redacted.
Mm, mm. And what are some other changes you want to make? And what are some things you want to build upon that Devon has pretty much laid out a really solid, strong foundation for the city clerk's office. So what do you want to build upon that he's done? And what do you want to bring in different?
Yeah. So, one thing that I want to do is digitize our records. For example, our ordinance and resolution. Many of them spanning back years are not accessible digitally. So I want to make sure that those records are digitized so that way they're accessible to the public at any time and people don't have to come into the office between our hours of operation to view them. They're accessible via our website, anytime. I also want to, again, build upon that process of FOIA, going out into the community and hosting civic engagement events, where not only will I educate folks about why FOIA is important, why it's important in holding us accountable as an organization, but also what they can request and access, so that way they can see what's happening in their community. I also want to increase civic engagement by hosting voter registration drives where we go out to every single ward, whether that's on our own or in partnership with organizations or including the aldermen. I would welcome that, and invite, their folks during a town hall meeting. If there's no one that has registered to vote and needs to, we could facilitate that need right there. I also want to implement down the line a language access policy, and because I said I understand how we have a Spanish speaking audience here in the community, I want to make sure that our records are accessible to them and they're able to see what's happening in their community. And I think for me that starts by producing the Spanish newsletter and taking that responsibility on into our office. And that could potentially also look like us reproducing city council minutes in Spanish. So that way folks can get that opportunity to be even more heavily involved in the civic engagement process. And again, continue to advocate for more transparency, more accountability from not only our elected officials, but also the organization.
I got another question in here. I want to make sure I understand it. Um, Clerk Sheriff, um, based on an allegation, Clerk Reed shared confidential executive session information, and the mayor charged the clerk with violating OMA, OMA for the same. But according to city records, you shared that closed session information with everyone at City of Evanston with the link after a scheduled meeting with two city attorneys. Did you know that that was how that information was going to be used?
I am not understanding. That's a lengthy question. I don't, can you repeat that again, Malika?
Um, okay. So Clerk Reed shared confidential executive session information, and the mayor charged the clerk with violating OMA for, for the same. But according to city records, you shared that closed session information with everyone at City of Evanston with the link after a scheduled meeting with two city attorneys. Did you know that that was how that information was going to be used?
So matters relating to executive session, we are not allowed to discuss in public. And that even holds true to me as a staff member. I'm not allowed to discuss any matters relating to executive session. So unfortunately, I can't speak to that matter, but I wish I could, but unfortunately, there are rules set in place for a reason, and I am still bound by those rules even as a candidate.
Okay. Okay. Um, did you ever attempt to clarify that with decision makers that you released that information, or did they already know, or did law department attempt to persuade you not to disclose that? Help us understand how that went down. So I know you can't go into detail, but can you help the public understand how that went down in terms of the executive session?
Um, Again, that question is a bit confusing, Malika. I don't know exactly what they're asking, but again, well, before I answer, why don't you read it to me again? Because I want to make sure that we're clear on this.
Okay. Did you ever attempt to clarify that with decision makers that you released that information, or did they already know? Or did the law department attempt to persuade you not to disclose that? Help us understand how that went down.
So again, this again is relating to executive session, and again, I'm a city staff member, and I can't speak of that. No one, including the council, isn't allowed to speak of things that happen inside executive session. So unfortunately, I can't speak on.
I really believe that the court orders have to try to locate. I would support.
Eddie? Oh, I'm sorry, Eduardo? Eduardo? I think you froze.
Malika,
Yes, I
did you
lost
hear
you
the
there.
last part?
No, no, repeat what all of whatever you just said, because I didn't, your screen froze.
Oh man, someone's trying to sabotage us. Oh boy.
I was like, what? Is he talking? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so as I mentioned, it's because this is pertaining to executive session and those matters, I can't disclose any of that information or speak on what transpired because I'm bound by the same rules as the city council. It's very sensitive information. And
Mhm.
so, I will say that uh, it, that in my capacity, I'll make sure that we look at being more transparent and and in releasing minutes related to executive session, so people have the opportunity to learn what was discussed. So, I hope to implement that.
Okay. So just to close it up, so did did you release the closed session audio that Clerk Reed was blamed for? Did you release that executive session, that closed session?
I have never released any executive session information to the public or anyone.
Mm, okay. That was such an intense time period for the city clerk's office because the attacks were coming on Clerk Reed like one after the other. I was like, God, he can't get a break to just do his job without constantly having to defend himself and seek counsel of his own to, keep his job. Um, um, were you able to? Because you said that you're really good at working relationships. Um, were you able? Well, clearly you weren't able. Did you attempt to try to make it a more pleasant working environment? Because clearly there was just a lot of tension that he was under, a lot of pressure he was under. So, being that person who's great at building relationships and relationships in the workplace, um, what did you do to try to calm all of that down? Because it was pretty hot. It was pretty
Yeah,
hot.
yeah. So for me, the way I did that was by doing the duties and responsibilities of that office
Mm,
because, I wanted the council to see that there were people in that office that were capable of doing the work, that were doing it daily, that there was someone there in the office that always had the office open for the public. So I allowed my my work to do the speaking for me. And that's how I was able to cultivate these strong relationships with not only city council, but members of the public and city staff. because they knew I was someone that they could depend on to get things done in a timely manner. They knew that I was someone who was committed to his role, but also committed to serving the public. And so because of that, these strong relationships were cultivated, and I'm very proud of that. And again, I may be the deputy city clerk, but I'm still a staff member. And so a lot of things that the clerk did, I would not been able to do because of my role.
Mm, mm, mm. Well, Eddie, I know my encounters with you when you were in the same office with Clerk Reed. I mean, you were always very hopeful and pleasant. And I think it was you who helped me with every FOIA request I submitted. You walked me through it and helped me um, through that whole process. Um, and then I came in and you weren't there. I was like, where did Eddie go? I'm sorry, where did Eduardo go?
I was probably on my lunch break. That's why you didn't see me.
Oh, well, you had moved upstairs to the city manager's office. I was like, why? Why did you move upstairs?
Oh, is that the question? Oh, um,
Yes.
so I was not moved to the city manager's office because that's on the fourth floor. I was relocated somewhere else, given that there was an investigation being done related to um, an unhealthy work environment. And so there was an investigation that was done, and my my the findings were true, factual, and so that is why I was temporarily relocated.
The findings were true and factual.
Yes, in regards to the unhealthy work environment.
You want to go into like what happened or?
No, not really. I mean, it was released already publicly, so it's out there, but I
Mm,
will say that what I went through and experienced, that was real. That's something that I experienced, and I have moved on from that, personally and professionally, and even through the midst of all of it, I continue to do my job and serve my community. And so I am, now running for office because I want to continue to do the job that I love doing every single day.
okay. Okay. Mm. So tell us more, Eduardo. Um, I just find it interesting that you didn't know what FOIA was when you took the job. And now you're like about to be well, not about to be, we don't know yet. You're running for the FOIA officer, city clerk position. So you had to have learned a great deal within the 4 years. How did you get all that information? Because let me tell you, when Clerk Reed is up there on that dais, he is like a freaking walking computer, just spitting out information. Just it's just all right there. It's people sit there in amazement. And I mean, have you attained all the same information that he has? I mean, because you started out not even knowing what FOIA was, like the rest of us.
Yeah, so I grew into that role because from day one I was um, doing the responsibilities of that office. I I also uh, surrounded myself with city staff who knew more about the way local government operated, and I also sought mentorship from one of the former deputies that was there, and she was instrumental in building me into this role, and I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful for all the staff who took the time to, again, give me the tools and resources that I needed. But above all, I learned everything by actually doing the job, by actually being the one to carry out those responsibilities And so I'm very proud of that I was able to do that with the assistance of many of my colleagues and friends at the city.
Mm, mm. Um, we got a comment in that going back to the allegations of the unhealthy work environment. Um, if any of that is untrue, if any of that is true, um, I mean, are you saying that he's unfit to hold office?
Well, that's so what I'm saying is that what I went through, that was real. The experience I went through, that was real. And so, I'm never gonna let public opinion take that from me because, I see that as victim shaming, and that's not something that we're about. You know, what I want to ensure is that we hold all elected officials to the same standards, and when they do something they're not supposed to, that they take accountability and own up to it. But um, what I'm saying is that what I went through was real, and I won't let public opinion or anyone tell me otherwise because I'm the one that lived through it and experienced it. So no one's gonna tell me otherwise.
Mm, mm. And what's the main message that you want to get out to the public, Eduardo? I feel like if anyone's been up to the Civic Center, they know you already. Um, they know you already. So for those who don't know who Eduardo Gomez is, what do you want them to know about you for this position, very important position of city clerk?
Yeah, absolutely. So to those that are watching us here today or might view this video later, I want you to know that from my appointment as deputy city clerk, I have been the face of that office. When folks like Malika walked in, when folks like Claire Kelly, Misty Wittenberg, and others walked into that office, the person they saw at the desk was me. I was always there welcoming them, greeting them, and always offering to help them, and always did my best to go above and beyond the line of service because that's what I'm about. I want to make sure that when people walk into our office, and at the end of the day, they can walk out and said, "Wow, that was some great customer service that I received." That
I can't hear you, Eduardo. You muted yourself. You muted
oh
yourself.
man, I think someone's after us, Malika. Oh boy.
I wouldn't be surprised. Shoot, goodness
Well,
gracious. Well, say
you
that
know,
again. You were saying that great customer service. I know
yeah,
you were very pleasant
thank
whenever I
you.
came.
And
Mhm.
that's the experience I always left people with, someone that was doing their best to serve them. And throughout the last 4 years, because of my work, because of my ability to be there every single day, that office has been able to function, has been able to remain open daily. Because of my work, I've been able to ensure that elections take place here in Evanston. I've been able to ensure that if one polling location closes, we can open somewhere else. And I do that with the relationships that I've also built with staff at the Cook County level. When something goes wrong, I know who to call to remedy that situation. I've made strong relationships with organizations here in the community, like the League of Women Voters and the Evanston Public Library. Those relationships are what's going to allow me to do more civic engagement in the community. I've always been a person of integrity, of holding myself to a higher standards, and I've never have ever done anything to against the public uh, interest. I've always been very transparent in what I do, and so I want people to know that if elected, I'll continue to do the great work that I've been doing for the past 4 years, and at the same time, continue to do some of the good work that the clerk did, such as, you know, making sure that we advocate for more transparency with the day-to-day activities of the organization. And so, you know, I don't want folks to listen to the misinformation that is out there in the public, because those that have actually stepped into that office and have seen me on numerous occasions know who I'm about in my role and what I've done. And so that's what we need to focus on. And that's what I want there to be a discussion around, about what I've done in those 4 years. And I think if you ask me or anyone else, they'll say that I've done a great job. I've done a tremendous job serving as the deputy city clerk. And I'm very proud of that.
Mm, mm. Well, we do have the forum coming up, and I'm looking forward to hearing all the candidates for city clerk answer questions from the residents. So we get to hear more about, you know, who you are, Eduardo, to the public. And one last question. I know we've gone over. Um, um, I know a couple of your opponents. So I know Misty. She's very familiar with the city clerk's office, how it works. Very knowledgeable. Stephanie Mendoza. I'm not really sure what her experience is as far as the city clerk's office goes. Um, Jackson is a law student, so he has a clue about how it all works. Cynthia Beebe, I'm not really familiar with her yet, but I will be interviewing her very soon. Looking forward to learning more about her. So what would you say, you bring to the table more than your opponents?
Well, what I bring to the table is, you know, the experience of being the only one that's actually done the role of the city clerk. Because, you know, like I said, I'm the current deputy city clerk. So I know all the ins and outs of that office. So I have that under my belt. You know, I've also been able to build relationships with city staff and city council members, and also, you know, some of the running mates that are out there right now. Some of the opponents, I've, you know, helped them when they were in my office. So I have good relationships with all of them. And so I think even if there is a new council, you know, I'll still be able to bring those strong relationships and my work ethic to the table to make sure that I'm able to do the things that I am advocating for, such as more access to resources and services, more transparency, and more civic engagement. So, you know, I think ultimately, you know, I have the actual experience of the job. I know what it entails. I know how to properly execute those duties and responsibilities. And so I just want to be given that opportunity to demonstrate to the public how me being in that capacity will not disrupt any of the services that we offer. Rather, we'll be able to enhance them to better serve our residents.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Eduardo. I think any of the information that's floating around out there now, they've got a voice and a face to the story, and can look more into you know look more into those stories with your explanation here today. Um, but thank you so much for your time, and this race is getting interesting.
Yeah, and thank you, Malika, for allowing me to be here today. And to everyone watching, you know, early voting is taking place at the Civic Center. So make sure that you guys go out there to vote. And if not, there's still time to do a mail-in ballot. You know, I encourage everyone to stay safe during these elections. So please, I hope all of you can make it out to the polls and make your voices heard. And if you guys have any more questions, you guys know where to reach me at. So thank you, Malika, so much for having me here.
Yes, yes. And please let everyone know your email address. The people here in this room right now, they can see your email, but I'm going to release it out to the public. So if you want to let everyone know where they can contact you for further questions,
Yeah. So if anyone wants to contact me, they're more than welcome to. My email is eduardo@gomezforclerk.com. And again, that's eduardo@gomezforclerk.com with the spelling of the word for, not the number four. So hopefully no other Eduardo running for city clerk gets that email.
All right. Thank you so much, Eduardo. And I will see you back here on the 16th with all of
All
your
righty.
and looking forward to learning more and hearing more about your vision, your plans for the office.
Thanks, Malika. Stay safe.
Okay. Thank
Thanks,
you. You
everyone.
too. All right. This is Malika, Evanston Live TV. That was Eduardo Gomez. He's running for city clerk. Right now, he holds the position of deputy city clerk. That was a lot of information. Guess you all can process it and unpack it and stay engaged, get to know who these candidates are, their work in the community, their vision, their plan. Stay engaged. Stay engaged. All right. And stay tuned. February 16th, we will have all of the candidates for the city clerk office right here on Evanston Live TV. Stay safe.